everybody. Welcome to the Rotary Club of Fort Worth. You're in the best place to be. And on top of it all, we've got bread pudding and ice cream today. If you were at the Holiday Festivals, you will know the story behind that. And if we all of a sudden hear a certain someone break out an operatic jubilation, we will know who it is. All that to say, let's get going with the meeting. Sarah Richardson, Vice President for Advancement at BRID, if you could join me for the invocation, and Wesley Gentle, Director and President of Art Fort Worth, will lead us in the national anthem. Yes.
As we gather here today, we pray to be ever mindful of opportunities to be of service to our fellow citizens and to our community, keeping always in mind these enduring values of life. I remember the rest of it. So let us, we want to exert our efforts on those items and in those areas upon which future generations can build with confidence. Let us continue to strive to make a better world. Amen. Amen.
And to this day, every time we end that anthem, I always hear Bernie Appel, bless him, saying, "Play ball." So indeed, let's play ball. You may be seated. Justin McLaughlin, would you like to do it, Justin? Well, I will take the place of Justin McLaughlin to welcome our guests and visiting Rotarians. Jeremy, I'm not sure how to pronounce the last name, I'm sorry, Benezi, is a guest of Courtney Lewis, and Jeremy Benezi. Welcome. Of course, we've got our district governor, Dan Steele. We're especially delighted to have him here. And if I've missed anyone, I apologize. We are indeed delighted to have you with us today. You know, as we're celebrating our 110th year, it's fun to pause and just take a look back at the history, the traditions, the people that make this club what it is today. And one of those is shown on the slide coming up in the fedora, the gentleman in the white hat. That is Charles Gordon Boswell. Now, no doubt we all know about Boswell flowers. So this club started in 1913. He opened his first floral shop in 1919 right across the street on Pennsylvania Avenue from the hospital. And when he eventually found his way to Rotary, the first thing he did was start sending a beautiful centerpiece for the head table each week. And 64 years later, we still get that centerpiece each week. And here it is. That is such a special tradition, and I'm guessing that many of our newer members have no idea. And so Gordon's son-in-law, Felix Ankley, is shown next to him, the taller gentleman. And for many years, he was also a Rotarian, and Felix had 4 daughters. Most of them were working in the business, and a couple of them were also Rotarian. So what a legacy they leave us. And it is indeed a special thing. And then for many years when we had the yellow rose tradition, he would also supply the yellow rose. So speaking of beloved traditions, let's get on to those 24 words that we customarily recite each meeting. The four-way test. 1, is it the truth? 2, is it fair to all concerned? 3, will it build goodwill and better friendships? 4, will it be beneficial to all concerned? And now it's time to sit back, enjoy that bread pudding and ice cream while we get set for next week's bylaws vote. To start us off with a Q&A, could I please have Tran Trong, who is a retired Alcon Director of Engineering and Project Management. And he and some other members of our esteemed governance committee, they're all sitting together at the table. They will each, I think, share a few words with us.
I'd like to ask my fellow committee members to go up and let you see their faces. You know, I run into Jared Sloan last week, and he asked me, he said, are you going to be at the meeting next week on the 27th? I said, well, I'm afraid so. So I said, Jared, I don't know about how our members going to take it when a guy come up week after week, you know, 3-4 weeks in a row talking about practically the same thing. So Jared said, Tran, don't worry about it. If I could go up there to the podium 3 or 4 times last November to trying to sell my clay chute, you should be able to go and try to sell the bylaws. Okay. Where's my, oh, you gonna do it? Yeah, go ahead and do it. Go to the next one. Thank you very much. Okay, so today we're gonna have a little overview and of the committee and its objectives, plural, and overview of bylaws. Most of you have seen this before, right? Current mission, you know, we're trying to keep all our governance documents up to date and viable. And we did go through the Constitution, but we decided we can live with the Constitution as it is, because any changes there would require approval by Rotary International. So we concentrate on the bylaw with the view that in order to proceed to the policies and procedures manual, which is what we like to revise, we need to get the bylaws updated. Okay, and you've seen the members of our committee, you know. You have Larry Anfin, Judith Carrier, Gary Cumby, Fernando Costa, Jim Whitten, and President Sean is our ex-officio member. Now, before that, of course, all the previous presidents up to Rachel, you know, Carlo, Courtney, they were all ex-officio members of our committees, and they all did their part in helping us get our work along, you know. Of course, past President Larry is already a regular member of our committee. So, you know, timeline, we well into it now. You know, today is, of course, our summary and some examples of our changes, some illustrations. And of course, next week we'll be voting on that now. I've heard a rumor that we're gonna have drawings of good items next week. So please tell your friends and yourself, please show up next week. We need quorum, okay. And you also have received these documents over a week ago for your reading enjoyment. President Sean said that it's light reading is very enjoyable, so you should be able to go through it right now. But you know, the blue one, D and E, those are the lists of all the significant changes. We didn't list punctuations and capitalization and all that, but we'll talk about later. And of course, the document A there is the red line. Okay, so you'll be able to see what was existing and what were being changed or proposed changes. And of course, the B document is a clean copy of what it would be, okay? And there's some 2-3 typos in there, but we'll talk about that during the P&A. Now, but you know, how many of you are here to listen to our beloved District Governor, Dan Still? So, you know, even though Chad said it's okay for me to go up here, you know, I would like 2 members of our committee to present you some of the highlights. Now, in documents D and E, we list them by changes, by article, section, and pages and all that. But today, we're going to illustrate some example by certain broad categories. So with that, past President Fernando Costa.
Thank you, Chairman Tran. Good afternoon, folks. The current bylaws are basically sound, but they've been around a long time, sort of like members of the governance committee.
Excuse me.
Consequently, some provisions are obsolete or inconsistent with current practice, so we've recommended some bylaw amendments to correct those problems, and Gary Cumby and I are here to give you a brief summary as organized under several broad categories. So for example, we're seeking to make the bylaws more consistent with the Constitution of the club, which is our foundational document. And as a second theme, we're seeking to address aspects of the bylaws that pertain to inconsistencies. So for example, we want to cite the president-elect as an officer of the club. Somehow that item was omitted from the original bylaws. A third category has to do with addressing some practical problems, such as the schedule for our annual elections. We want to start a little earlier in the year so as not to have too much activity at the end of the year. And fourth, to reflect our actual practices. So for example, the current bylaws still refer to paper ballots and manual counting, and now we're moving into electronic voting, and so the proposed bylaws reflect that current practice. Finally, I've been asked to mention the need for a correction in the document that you received this morning, because the document you received this morning says in Article 1, Section 4, that the officers of our club, the board, is to publish in the rotograph biological information about all of the nominated candidates. Now, we anticipate that there will be some general interest in that information. Nevertheless, I'm obligated to tell you that the original intent of the Governance Committee was to publish biographical information. And so without objection, we will make that correction. And now, past President Gary Cumby.
I thought I was going to have to provide all my pronouns. Depending on which slide you're looking at. Okay, let's look at the next one. One of the things, now, I was pleased and privileged to be on this committee and looking forward to continuing to work on the policies and procedures, or practices and procedures. What happened is that a lot of the things we've looked at were really common sense. They were no-brainers. And for whatever reason, those got assigned to me. And I'm going to try to cover some of those. For example, we had some legal terms we had to fix around things like our foundations and so forth. And so we were blessed to have attorneys both on our committee and from the outside who were able to look at those kinds of terminology and make sure that we updated and were compliant with all the laws and so forth that we would need to do. We had to make some changes just because times have marched on. When many of us older Rotarians joined the club, there were only 4 avenues of service in Rotary. And in more recent years, a 5th has been added, New Generations, which is our outreach to younger Rotarians and to younger people to try to encourage things like Interact clubs and Rotaract clubs, which our club's doing a good job of on both ends. So anyway, there was that additional avenue of service. We just needed to add that to our bylaws to show that we were paying attention to all 5 avenues. I'm not sure which page, if you'll keep up with me the best you can, we had to give the board a little more flexibility. If you looked at some of our bylaws, they prescribed things like the exact time that the meeting would start and what the agenda would look like, the different items that had to be on the agenda and so forth, and spelled all that out. And we just decided there was a whole lot of over specificity that we had to fix. And at the same time, we created new words like over specificity. But so we addressed some of those things so that now if we want to start the meeting at 5 minutes till 12, we can do that, and we're not violating our bylaws. And the last one, if you'll go to it, there were some things that just we don't do anymore, or we do them differently. And one of those examples is we used to have an executive director. Back when Neva was there, and before that her aunt Geneva, we call that position executive director. Well, that sort of sounds like a boss. And when you think about it, that was probably right back in those days. But we don't do that anymore. We have a staff assistant or club administrator. And so we have language in there now that addresses that position that way. Also, we decided that we should add some responsibilities to the vice president, which previously the bylaws only said that person is there in case the president doesn't show up. And we decided that job needed to have some more duties, and so we made some committee assignments and so forth for that person. That's going to mean we're going to have to be more careful now when we pick vice presidents, but that's probably a good thing as well. So those are just some examples of some of the no-brainers that we had to look at and fix, and hopefully we've addressed everything. I know you'll read all the way through all of the bylaws before you vote on them, just like Congress does when they vote, and so we'll hope everything passes just like that does. So, Tran, back to you.
Let's give a hand. Okay, I don't have to tell any more jokes because those 2 are master jokers. So if we have time, I'll tell you a little bit more of some of the typographical, not too many, there's 3, 4 of them. And I'll ask the board to approve the changes even in those later today, so that anybody said, we can't vote on that on the 3rd because the board hadn't voted on that punctuation mark, then, we will get all tidy up. But today we have some questions and comments. We start, past President Carlo, who'll be up here at the end of our presentation to say a few words. We get pitchmen all around the club. And so, first, we'll start with superficial thing. You already heard about the biological data. And please, when you ask a question or make a comment, please raise your hand so that Mike Kimball and Tom Rich, Dick Riddell, the head of the Transportation Department for Fort Worth, used to be, right? So please wait for the mic so that we can all hear you. Then we'll move into more substantive questions. So anybody with any comment on the formatting of the bylaws, the divisions, typographical area, things like biological data? You know, we have to tell Pam Cannell that she has to vote yes on this, otherwise, you know, requiring people to submit biological data. That's why we couldn't find too many board candidates sometimes. And Governor Dan, we never really require biological. So any comments on the formatting, typographical, or anything like that? If you can find something that's equivalent to the biological data, you get a big prize. Okay, so we'll move now on more substantive material substantive matters. So anything on the adequacy of any of the changes? We didn't go far enough, we went too far. Anybody has any comment on that? Derek, you told me you had a comment?
All right, yeah, I don't need a microphone. So as I understand it, really, this is going to do two things. This is going to bring our bylaws up to date and really reflect what we're currently doing. And that's going to give us the ability to make the more detailed changes in the policies and procedures. Is that correct?
Right.
So for example, for those of you who don't know, we've been working on updating our financial policies and procedures. And so that would allow us to actually make that official as part of what we do day in and day out, correct? The other question I have is I noticed that Gary Cumby's bylaw change to have all R100 people wear Hawaiian shirts and Argyle socks. Didn't make it in to this proposal. But if this passes, next year we'll be able to vote electronically on that, correct? And we won't have to have all these meetings to make these types of changes in the future. Does that understand that correctly?
Maybe, possible.
All right, thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Derek. Derek is very...
Did you want me to kick them if they say stuff like that?
You might do it for me. Derek is very enthusiastic about electronic voting, you know, and he said, wish we could do that for our bylaws. But we do it on Zoom. Past President Carlo is going to run our Zoom voting next week for us. So that would help us get quorum. But, you know, come here so you can maybe have some drawings for some good tickets. You know, I've already approached Diane Kennedy, so. Is Diane here today?
Yes, Tron, some of us are aware that several years ago, we were having a large number of members that weren't attending, and we had some financial problems. Were those changes addressed so that we don't have those problems again?
Well, when we formed the finance committee, one of the bylaw changes we incorporated was the rolling in the cost of the meals into the dues, and that made a big difference because that's dependent on how many members, active members we have. The problem before wasn't attendance or not attending. The problem before was people who we kept on the book as members who were not paying their dues on time. That's why you always hear my friend President Sean saying, pay your dues, right? So paying the dues on time is very important, you know, because we have to pay the Fort Worth Club for all these expenses. So, but remember now, as Derek has mentioned, after these changes are approved, we will move ahead our committee with the updating of the policy and procedures manual. That will go, those will go into even more detail of how we do business. You know, as long as they're not in conflict with the bylaws, we can make it as detailed as possible. And the beauty is that any changes in the P&P manual only require a board approval and not membership voting. So we won't bother you again. But what, you know, when we get to that phase, which will be shortly after you approve the changes next week, is that we'll ask for contributors in our club and not just limited to the 6 members. You know, we'll ask for collaborators and contributors so that you can help us review and suggest some of the procedures, policies and procedures.
Can I add to that?
Yeah, go ahead.
Just so that everybody knows, kind of building on what Carlo and Courtney have done, we've updated those financial policies and procedures. The board has approved a minimum cash reserve of $100,000 that we're working to do. We've opened up another bank account and separating that out. So a lot of those issues that we ran into, we've been working to take care of already.
Yeah, and the policy and procedures that the Finance Committee have developed and have been approved by the board, we'll incorporate those into the club policies and procedures manual. No, we'll give credit to the Finance Committee. Some fool a few years ago founded that committee, and now we have to live with the consequences. Right? Okay, go ahead. If not, if you don't have a questions, we'd like to hear from you on your comments on the process, on the bylaws, and on the changes. Okay, remember now, we have a week to go, so you can email me with any further questions or comments. If you don't want to look up my email address, just send it to Aurora, and she'll make sure that I receive that. We're ahead of schedule here, President Sean, and you know why? Because we want to give the district governor more time. Well, now that we have time, I have to tell you something about this. How many people went to the district meeting last year in Graham? What do you call that meeting? The district assembly. Okay. I know Shanna went, Courtney went, I think Cook driver too. Yeah. So I was walking in, I wasn't late, but a lot of people already there. So I tried to spot the table with our club members. I know we don't have a reserve table, So I spotted Courtney or somebody there, so I walked to it that way, but it was a big hall, right? And so by the time I get there, that table was full, and I was looking around, and at the next table, one or two people were telling me, sit here, we have a couple of empty seats. So I said, okay, thank you, sit here. And they asked me, and I said, well, I was trying to sit with my fellow club members, but this is good. So I found out a few minutes after that was the head table of Dan and the speakers. But they had maybe a couple of no-show or something, so I benefited. Yeah, and we talked. One of the speakers was talking about how he could tell a friendly club, a good Rotary club, is by how they receive their visitors. And of course, that the district governor's staff passed the test. So please give a hand. President Sean's going to introduce him properly, but please give a hand to our district governor, Dan Steele. Thank you very much, folks. Oh, excuse me. I asked Vice President Carlo to say a few minutes after, so Vice President Carlo, another pitchman for the committee. Thank you very much.
Please vote yes.
So well done. Thank you, Carlo. And thank you very much to the Governance Committee. And truth, they have spent not only hours, literally years, but incredible amounts of time splitting hairs and having back and forth debates. So I think we're in good hands, and if you have any questions, please bring them forth, and otherwise we'll plow ahead. And now, without further ado, let me tell you about our district governor this year, Dan Steele. He is going crazy for Rotary. Crazy has been his theme all year. We have crazy water at the Crazy Hotel in Mineral Wells, and it's been a fun year. Dan was born in Graham, Texas, and grew up on his family's cattle ranch. He was active in 4-H, showing steers, heifers, and goats. He and his family were active members of the First United Methodist Church, where he participated in the youth group and sang in the chancel choir. In high school, he was a member of the band, including jazz stage band, which was a favorite activity of his. He also participated in school musicals and the thespian group. He served as president of the student council in his senior year. After graduating from college, he returned to Graham in January 1975 and took a position with Graham Savings and Loan Association. The Rotary Club of Graham immediately recruited him to be a member and to sing in their Rotary Follies, the annual show fundraiser. He was a member of the Graham Club through 1983. In '84, he began his new career as an optician and practice administrator for his wife's optometry practice, Dr. Carrie Labby, in Mineral Wells, Texas. In March of '91, he joined the Rotary Club of Mineral Wells, and in '93 became secretary for the club. He was honored to serve as president of his club from 1995 through '96, the same Rotary year that his fellow club member and friend, past District Governor Janet Holland, became one of the first 8 women to serve as Rotary District Governors. He has since served as foundation chair for many years and the treasurer since March of 2000. Past District Governor Jerry Parr presented him the Rotary Builder Award for his club in 2008. He became a Paul Harris Fellow in June of 1995 and remained a sustaining member of the Rotary Foundation. He reached the major donor level 1 in March of 2014 and joined the Paul Harris Society in August of 2014. Dan achieved donor level 2 in August of 2022. He continues to be an active member of the Rotary Club of Mineral Wells. In District 5790, he served as assistant governor for 4 years and as lieutenant governor under past District Governor Marion McDuff from 2016 to 17. He completed the Rotary Institute for Leadership Training in February of 2009 and the District Vision Facilitation Training in June of 2016. He served as the District Grant Subcommittee Chair from 19 to 20 and 2021. He participated in wheelchair projects to the Dominican Republic in 2014 and Costa Rica in 2016. In 2021, he completed the Rotary Leadership Institute course and became an RLI facilitator. Dan and Carrie have attended Rotary International conventions in Chicago, Salt Lake City, New Orleans, Birmingham, England, and Houston. Dan says, Rotary is my passion. So our Assistant Governor, Bud Walker, for Area 11, who's actually a member of the Rotary Club of Fort Worth, was to read that, but it was my pleasure to do so, and we are delighted to welcome you to our stage, sir. Welcome.
So I want to thank Sean for participating in our Lone Star President-elect Training Seminar the end of February last year, and I have a certificate for her that I had planned to get to her much sooner, but we'll do it now. So I think she just about told you everything about me, but you know, I've been in the Mineral Wells Rotary Club a long time, and like she said, I come from the town of Crazy, Mineral Wells. First water wells are drilled in the 1880s, and it wasn't too long before people began to notice that people with mental afflictions seemed to get much better. And so that's because there was a lot of lithium in those wells, a lot of minerals. So, you know, we became the city of Crazy. There was a Crazy sign that went over the street that pointed toward the Crazy Water Hotel about 75 years ago, and a new one's been put up over 180, just west of 281, about 2 years ago. So we've got that resurrected, and it points toward the Crazy Water Hotel. Crazy Water Hotel was bought by people in Mineral Wells, and Mineral Wells people invested in it, and they've renovated it and have some apartments in it and hotel rooms, and there's some really nice retail stores around the ground level. So if you haven't been to Mineral Wells, there's a lot going on. A few years ago, it was pretty dead, but there is a lot going on. The Baker Hotel, they're in the midst of renovating it. They got a little behind, but I think 2025 or 26 is when they're going to have that ready. So I grew up on a ranch. I worked pretty hard, you know. I was either feeding cattle, feeding goats, or working on fence, or working cattle, or working goats on weekends, and then during the summers, my job was to build fence. My brother and I both worked at that. I had really good parents. They were involved in the First Methodist Church in Graham. They took my brother and I, and we participated in the youth programs, Boy Scouts, different things, and I just am really thankful that I had parents that were loving and caring, that they made sure that we had opportunities. Some of those leaders for those organizations, mentors to me, I guess, I later found out they were Rotarians. I didn't really realize that at the time. I didn't know much about Rotary. But one thing I noticed that they participated in a lot of organizations in the community. My parents did also. So I came to realize that participating in the community is important. If you're going to have a good community to live in, people have to be part of that and have to help make it that way. If you're at some of you are at the assembly at the Methodist Church in Graham, there was a banner on the wall with a quote from John Wesley, and it said this: "Do all the good you can, by all the means you can, in all the ways you can, in all the places you can, at all the times you can, to all the people you can, as long as you ever can." You know, that doesn't just apply to Methodists. I think that applies to all of us as Rotarians and members of our community as well. So she said, you know, after I graduated from college, I went back to Graham, and, you know, my boss at Graham Savings recruited me to go to Rotary, and because they had this kind of song and dance program they did, and they wanted me to help them sing in that. They also roasted all the organizations in town, you know, the Commissioners Court, the City Council, the school board, the Lions Club was a big competitor of ours, and so they really got roasted. But the other thing is we roasted our own members, and we had skits about what people thought Rotary was. And one of the big lines that was back then is the president of the Rotary Club of Wichita Falls this year. I was visiting with him, and that was the thing he remembered the most about the Rotary Follies, was the skits that the Rotary members did on themselves. He just thought they were hilarious. So like she said, life changed. I was working for an oil service company in 1984, and most of you know the oil prices crashed, and so the oil service company started moving trucks out and shutting down, and it wasn't long before I realized I wasn't going to have a job much longer. And about that time, I was getting married to my wife, Carrie, and she had that practice in Mineral Wells, but she didn't have an optical. And so I decided that I would learn the optical business and, you know, and help her and manage her practice. And so we did that and worked together for 35 years. I actually got my degree. I had a BBA in finance with some accounting, and so we utilized that, and I taught her how to do a lot of things that she didn't know how to do. So I was out of Rotary for 7 years in Mineral Wells, and I was really wanting to get involved, but I didn't know anybody in the Rotary Club. I didn't even know where they met or anything. So I had a guy come in from the Rotary Club and sell me an ad for some fundraiser they had, and I said, well, yes, I would like to do that, but I'd like an invite to the Rotary Club. So he said, okay. So he took me. A couple of weeks later, I was in the Rotary Club in Mineral Wells. I found out that most of those people in the Rotary Club were our customers and patients. So, you know, I just didn't know that. I do know one thing. I was 39 years old, and probably the next youngest person in that club was 10 years older than me. So it was real interesting to be there with, you know, some of the elderly, I wouldn't call them elderly, more mature, you know, leaders of the town. But I learned a lot from them. You know, we had some really good people, and they did some good programs. They talked about their professions, you know, and I learned a lot. So, you know, at first when I went to Rotary in Graham, I just went and visited. I attended. I didn't know anything about Rotary. I didn't go to any district meetings or anything like that. I just went every week because if I didn't show up, then Louis Pitcock, who was the secretary of the club, would call me on Monday after our Friday meeting, and he would say, we're going to make up in Breckenridge or Alney, and which one are you going to? And I'll come pick you up. And you just didn't have any choice. Back then, attendance was really obligatory. So also, Louis was one of those mentors to me as a youth leader at the Methodist Church as I grew up. As I got involved in mineral wells and became secretary and then president, I started going to all the district meetings and learning more about Rotary, learning about the Rotary Foundation. So I began to grow and evolve my journey of service through Rotary. When we got through with my year as president and Janet's year as district governor, I looked back and I said, boy, we had a great year and we didn't give any money to the Rotary Foundation. So I started working on that in our club. And I started giving $100 a year and encouraging everybody else to, and give to the polio plus. And it took me a few years to get everybody accustomed to doing that because nobody really said much to them about the Rotary Foundation. But I think the thing that really impressed me was, I was just a little guy. I gave my $100 a year, but when you combine that with 1.4 million Rotarians, that is a lot of money to use to do good works around the world in our communities. And so I've been dedicated to doing that because I felt like by going through the Rotary Foundation, I could make a difference in the world. But otherwise, I didn't have enough money to make much difference. So we did a lot of things in our club, district matching grants, every time there was a chance to do that. Because as treasurer, I made sure we got that involved. And I got people given to the foundation, so that encouraged the district to give us money. We hosted 5 group study exchanges. Some of you probably know what they were, but may not. Some of you may not. We had teams of people come from other countries, a Rotarian leader, and 4 younger executives of some sort, and they would visit our clubs in the district and learn how we did their jobs here. We also sent a team to their country and did the same thing. I really liked that program because I didn't get to travel much, and I got to learn about cultures in other countries and got to visit with people and get to know them. And I always thought it was a good program because if we get to know people in other countries and around the world, then it helps us with our effort to make our world a peaceful place to live. So we had group study exchange teams from Zimbabwe, Bangladesh, Chile, Brazil, and India. Janet got involved with the Bangladesh Rotarian, and they had a need for physical therapy in their country because they had lots of people that were crippled and had disabilities, and they didn't really have physical therapy facilities or know anything much about it. So their club built a hospital, and we had 3 matching grants. We took equipment that people weren't using anymore, surplus equipment for physical therapy over there to put in their hospital. And then we also had a physical therapist from one of the Rotary clubs in Abilene that actually went over there and spent 2 or 3 weeks teaching them how to do physical therapy. So that was something that we Janet and our club helped put together. We had other clubs that helped us with that. I participated in some wheelchair projects. Our club gave money to them for several years. I finally got the chance to go in 2014. I went to the Dominican Republic is the one I went to that really had an impact on me. We were in San Juan de la Maguana, which was in the interior of the Dominican, and we're about 90 miles from Haiti, town of about 30,000, and really it was like going back into the 50s, I felt like, when we went there. I mean, things were just different. They had a good Rotary Club. They were they hosted us and really took care of us. So we divided up into groups, and we took our wheelchairs around throughout the city and in some of the little towns around. We put those wheelchairs together, take them inside, and a lot of those people had elderly loved ones and things that really couldn't get out, couldn't do anything. They couldn't move them very well, and so first thing we would do is get them in those wheelchairs, and they would take them outside because the homes they were dark and dingy and little. And so we'd take them outside, and the whole community would be there celebrating with them because they finally got a chance. It freed up those people, gave them a little something to be happy about, but it also made those families happy because then they could take their loved ones to church and other things, and they weren't stuck at home all the time. We had, in one of the little communities we had some children that had either had some problems when they were born or MS or something, but they had real problems. And so we had, I think, 3 pediatric wheelchairs for those children that they had found. And we took those to those families, and you really kind of had the same thing. I mean, that really freed up the moms and those people so that they could take their children and go do things. It made it much easier. The other thing, those people just followed us around from house to house. When we got those dispensed, they said to us, "Come with us." And we went to 2 or 3 other homes where they had children that had the same need. We went back and talked to our Rotarian leaders in the Rotary Club there in San Juan de la Maguana, and we ordered some wheelchairs in. They were sent in after we came home, but the Rotary Club took them out and dispensed them to those families. I think the thing that really impressed me was those people were happy. They had nothing, but they helped each other, and they had a real sense of community. And I think sometimes, we miss that in our country now. Around 1998, Lewis Pitcock Jr., who had become district governor in 1984-85 from the Graham Club, invited me to a dinner there with their club, with about 15 people one evening, and he said they had a special speaker. I was in Mineral Wells, so I said, "Yeah, I'll go back. I'll come back, Lewis, and I'll be happy to do that." Their special guest was Carlos Canseco, who was the Rotary International President in 1984-85. And he was there to talk to us about polio and about how afraid in the 50s all the parents were that their children were going to get polio. They kept them inside during those times of the year when polio was worse. They wouldn't let them go swimming. They closed the windows up. It was just a miserable time for those parents trying to protect their children. He was the health secretary in the state of Nuevo Leon and lived in Monterrey, Mexico. So he got involved in some of that. He got to know Albert Sabin as Albert was working on polio vaccines. And later he collaborated with Albert to develop an aerosol vaccine. And so in 1979, they went to the Philippines to vaccinate children in a multi-year project where they immunized 6 million children. And they did that to find out if that really would work, if they really could eliminate polio, and it was really highly successful. So in 1985, Carlos Canseco asked Rotary to take on polio and eliminate polio. The World Health Organization told Rotary that they couldn't do it. They didn't have the expertise. They didn't have enough money. Well, the first year we raised $120 million, and the next year about the same, and then it's been more from then on. I think Rotarians have given about $2.1 billion to polio eradication. So the thing that WHO found out is we had about 34,000 or 5,000 Rotary clubs around the world where Rotarians had a lot of influence in their communities and in their countries, and it was those Rotarians that went out and actually did vaccinations in their countries, and they found out that it really worked. Who decided, well, maybe the Rotarians are onto something. Maybe that's something that will make it easier for us to do our jobs. So that's where we've been. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation started helping us about, I'd say 11 or 12 years ago, and so they match our polio contributions 2-to-1. So that's really made a lot of difference, and it's really encouraged a lot of Rotarians to give more money. So my journey through Rotary, I really haven't had an aha moment like I hear somebody say they have. I just had through learning, dedication and growth, I continue my Rotary service to make an impact in my community and in the world. Jennifer Jones wants us to imagine the possibilities and the change we can make to transform the world. But I think that's why we're all Rotarians. The Rotary vision statement says, together we see a world where people unite and take action to create lasting change across the globe, in our communities, and in ourselves. So Jennifer said, imagine a world that deserves our best, where we get up each day knowing that we can make a difference. So I say imagine making all people feel welcome and comfortable in Rotary as we grow our membership. Imagine all Rotarians understanding the Rotary Foundation and the good work that it does and the need to give to the annual fund and to Polio Plus. Imagine the impact we have working in our communities on community and global projects, and as well as working to respond to disasters around the world. At the International Assembly last year, which we had to do online instead of going to Orlando, Florida, to meet with all our fellow district governor-elects, the 500 and something of them, she told us in her last address to us that, she said, although we all have dreams, acting on them is a choice we make. When an organization like Rotary dreams about big things like polio and creating peace, it becomes our responsibility to make it happen. You don't imagine yesterday, she said, you imagine tomorrow. So I want to close with a quote from Mark Twain. Let us endeavor so to live that when we come to die, even the undertaker will be sorry. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dan. I know from working with this gentleman this year how very dedicated he is to Rotary, and I think you get a taste of that just from listening to the few minutes that we've had to spend with him today. It is a tradition for the Rotary Club of Fort Worth that we donate, or we make a donation in honor of each program speaker, and I think you're going to particularly like our donation because it is to the Polio Plus Fund.
Oh, good.
And there's a memento to that effect in this bag, and thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you very much.
So a few quick announcements. Fellow Rotarian Rosa Navahar is serving as chairman of the Fort Worth Chamber of Commerce. It was brought to my attention that we should definitely mention that today. If you can't tell, tonight it's Rotary at the Rodeo. I will see you there. Be sure and pick up your tickets from Aurora. The USS Fort Worth crew is arriving. Actually, they arrived, I think, about an hour ago. And if you are interested or available to have lunch with them or dinner at the Riata on Sunday, please see Tim Holden or Karen Fox or J.R. Labby. Come join us, the Cowtown 5K walk race, Saturday morning, 7:45 a.m., February 25th. Don't forget about the District Paul Harris match that's going through February 28th. We will continue to revisit that in the next few weeks. And while we imagine Rotary, you can also imagine Melbourne, Australia. The annual convention's coming up May 27th through 31st. Dues are now very due, and there is a special board meeting following this lunch with the district governor here on the 12th floor Imperial Room. Finally, please do attend next week. We need to have quorum and we need to get that vote successfully through. And once again, how we all love Boswell flowers. I want to also, it is our tradition, Dan, that we've been inspired by the Rotary Club of Georgetown, Texas. Every Friday, I get a peace quote in my mailbox, and they are beautiful. Peace is not something you wish for. It is something you make, something you are, something you do, and something you give away. Those words are by Robert Fulghum, who's a Unitarian minister and author who's perhaps best known for his work, All I Really Need to Know I Learned in Kindergarten. Next week, Stacy Pierce, Streams and Valleys update with Paxton Motherall. It connects right to our own Rotary Plaza as well. And so with that, this meeting is adjourned.
I'm never gonna be untrue. Cause I didn't have nothing if I didn't have you. If I didn't have you, I'd long ago been left in the dark, out in the cold, blowing around from town to town like a feather in the wind. If I didn't have you, I know I'd be floundering around like a ship at sea, lost in the rain of a hurricane. That's where I'd have been. But I didn't get lost cause I saw your light shining like a beacon on a cold dark night. And the sun came up and the skies turned blue. Oh, I wouldn't have nothing if I didn't have you. My blessings every night I pray that the Lord lets me keep you just one more day. And every day he does, cause God knows too that I wouldn't have nothing if I didn't have you. If I didn't have you, I'd long ago been left in the dark, out in the cold, blowing around from town to town like a feather in the wind. Didn't have you, I know I'd be floundering around like a ship at sea, lost in the rain of a hurricane, and that's where I'd have been. Lost when I saw your light shining like a beacon on the cold dark. Then the sun came up and the skies turned blue. No, I wouldn't have nothing if I didn't have you. Well, I've already said it, but I swear it's true. I know I wouldn't have nothing if I didn't have
Pandora, not